Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very, very much, as always, for taking the time to join me. And today I'm absolutely delighted for a whole variety of reasons to be joined by leadership coach and current president of the International Coaching Federation Calgary chapter, Robyn Holloway, who is here to discuss her journey in coaching and some other very interesting things, I am sure. Robyn's career encompasses over 25 years of experience in human resources, consulting, media, law and healthcare. Her love of learning and challenging herself led her to her diverse career that she has enjoyed thus far. And after becoming a mum and juggling responsibilities, Robyn started to look for ways to bring more balance into her own life, which led Robyn to work with a coach. And as Robyn was working with a coach, she felt like coaching was a natural fit, allowing her to fulfill her purpose of helping others. Robyn's coaching focus is on helping leaders navigate change and transition while defining what leadership means to them. And a little bit of a personal story from my perspective, this conversation has been quite long in the making because as I was embarking upon my own coaching journey, I was very grateful to be introduced to Robyn through a mutual friend. Shout out to Julie Sexsmith for doing the introduction. And that was back in 2021, believe it or not. And I was considering doing the education path that Robyn had initially chosen as well, which I eventually did do. And Robyn was so kind and gracious with her time to put me on the right path and tell me the pros and cons and how things could and might go. So very, very appreciative. So it's almost like I don't know, what would I call it? A full circle moment or something like that. But I'm absolutely thrilled to get the opportunity to have this conversation. Robyn, thank you very, very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Gary, for the warm welcome. And it's so nice to connect with you again today as well.
Absolutely. So, like I like to do with most of my guests, let's start with your journey. I've explained some of the highlights, but not the experiences that you were having in and of the moment. Specifically, what would you say that ignited or sparked your passion for helping other people and ultimately using coaching as that vehicle?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, way long time ago, I took a psychology class back in grade 11 in high school, a long time ago, fell in love with it, just fascinated by what makes people do the things that they do, what influences them, and all of those different parts of it. Did a degree in psychology. Found that that was maybe not going to be my path forward at that time. Took a kind of pivot into human resources, that field, which is a helping field as well. So still adjacent to it. And then, yes, like you shared, I met a coach. I actually hired a coach for myself. Not really even knowing at the time what coaching even was, what to expect, had no idea. But I was very interested in the possibilities. And I was going through a bit of change and transition in my own life at the time. So it was a good fit for me. And then, yeah, and then I just fell in love with it. And I thought, oh, this is it. This is the way that I want to help people. This is what makes sense to me and brings me joy. And then it took a little longer till I moved forward with that journey and made the transition. But yeah, now I happily run my own coaching business. And it's been, I think, 7.5 years now since I completed my coach training and moved into this full time. So I'm totally loving it.
I love it. I love it. And I can feel the passion coming through the screen as you're talking about that. So I'm really, really interested when you engaged with the coach, you mentioned there didn't really know what it was, didn't really know if it could help. My words, not yours, of course. How did that, if I could say, transaction come around when you're at almost this pivotal moment, or maybe you don't even know you're at a pivotal moment, but you're at a moment of some description and you say, I just need a wee bit of a different perspective, some help. How did that go about? How did you do your research? How did you land on the right type and style of coach for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I did a lot of research. Sometimes I'm an impulsive person and I jump into things. So at the time, I had young kids. My husband traveled a lot for work. I worked in a really demanding job, and I was lacking anything to do with self-care or really taking care of myself. And then I went, I think someone might have got this for me as a gift. I can't remember, but I went to a local wellness center here where I am and went for a hot stone massage. And in there, they had a sign up for, advertising life coaching services.
Right.
And something about it just drew my eye, and I just thought, what is that, right? And just the picture and what she talked about and what she helped with. And so I reached out and I connected with her, and yeah, took a leap and just jumped in and decided to give it a try. And I think it was just a combination of the right thing at the right time that just struck a chord with what I was looking for.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I recall back now with not an insignificant amount of cringe now that I'm doing what I'm doing and getting to deal and work with people like you, that a friend of mine, this must be over 15 years ago, when I went, certainly when I was in Canada, had said, I have a career coach. And similar to your experience, I had no exposure experience or anything around coaching. And I said, what's a career coach? It's just, I'm just not 100% sure the direction I'm taking. I'm not sure if what I'm doing right now is going to facilitate future me to success and things like that. And I said, you can't just do that yourself. And he said, well, I can, but it's nice to get that different perspective. And I have to say, I thought it was lazy. I thought, like, if you're not going to sit down and value yourself enough to give yourself the opportunity to think about these things properly and create a plan and follow through on the plan for you and your family, what are you doing? Just a completely obnoxious attitude, quite frankly, to have. So to then have that experience where you're in a wellness setting, you see something that resonates with you and triggers you to do that, and then take the brave leap to say, I'm going to try this. I'm worthy, and I want this to be, some sort of catalyst for positivity. For me is brave, and I don't mind using that word repeatedly, because I say that to any new client, even if it is someone just prospecting and they're not 100% convinced whether they want to come in or not. The fact that they take the leap to set up a conversation with sometimes, most of the time, as a stranger, and then say, here's some things I'm struggling with. Here are some areas that I would like to see some discernible improvement in. That's incredibly brave. And I wonder if that was part of my less than positive attitude about my friend's career coaching at the time. Maybe there was some level of deep rooted, I don't know if I could do that. Attached to that as well. I'm not 100% sure. So in terms of your leadership coaching, specifically in and around change and transition, which seems to be a constant in today's life. Why change and transition, and what sort of changes, if I could use that word again, that do you typically see with leaders that you work with?
Yeah, and I think I was drawn to it just given the experiences in my own life that I've had lots of different changes and transitions, starting with moving around a lot as a child in my family, starting over in schools, those types of things. I've moved from different companies to different roles within companies and different interests. So I think for me, that's just something that's always been a part of my life. And then I think with leaders, like you said, it's such a key part of everyone's experience, and they're always in some state of change or transition. And so supporting them with that is really a passion of mine, that they don't lose themselves through that process, right? And lose who they are, and taking care of themselves, leading others, becoming the leader that they really want to be despite any of the changes, because it's not always positive changes, right? It's not
Yeah.
always positive changes that are happening. So I would say, primarily with the leaders that I work with, all kinds of different changes, whether that's changes in roles, responsibilities, different companies, different focus with their work. And then, of course, given what we all went through with the pandemic and all of that, there's been so much more focus, I notice, with leaders on well-being and work-life balance and purpose and meaning than there was pre-COVID. Those topics weren't nearly as prevalent before we went through COVID.
Yeah, and that's a great segue, because you'd mentioned some of the changes aren't positive, and sometimes I would imagine the changes that they are looking for help or support with might not end up being the changes that they need help and support with. You know, it could be I need to try and figure out, for example, to get to the next level or get that next promotion. And really, what they're trying to figure out is discernible behaviors that are holding them back, or actions or reactions to certain things that are happening. How do you typically, without giving away your trade secrets, of course, how do you navigate the conversations with these leaders to make sure that you're focusing on the best problems that they have, if I could say it that way?
Yeah, well, and I think that you would know this too, Gary, that coaching is very personalized, right? There's no one way, for example, to show leadership presence or one way to balance your work and life. It's very personal. And so I like to work with my clients to really better understand what are they looking for, like where are they trying to get to? And then, of course, helping them understand, what's the gap? Why are they not there already? And what are some of those obstacles that might be in place for them? And that can come from lots and lots of different areas. And like you said, often what they think they're going to work on and what else comes out, it kind of builds together. So, for example, like, oh, I would just want to take better control of my schedule, have more balance. Well, then it might come out that, hey, I can't delegate because I don't want to give people feedback and I'm afraid to have difficult conversations. And then it might be, oh, I really want my team to like me. So then and all of a sudden, all these things are getting in the way of really being able to set themselves up for success. So it is a little bit of uncovering what are those different places that might be challenging them.
Yeah. And I know that certain program or certain coaches, sorry, have, rigid types of programs that say this is the 6 steps towards this thing that you're moving towards, and others is more organic, kind of status updatey. How are you doing? Where are we going? Where do your offerings and services land in terms of programs versus organic?
I'd say a bit of both, because certainly, like you and I, we went through the same training with IPEC for our core coach training. I've also done training in positive psychology, emotional intelligence, change management, others I'm probably not thinking of in the moment. And so all of those different ones have different tools and techniques and things you can bring into the session. And that's where I think like that personal approach comes in. It really is meeting the client where they're at and what they need in those sessions. So I don't say no, these are like 3 things I do with every single client, not necessarily.
Yeah, yeah, and maintaining that level of flexibility is absolutely key. To try and hopefully demonstrate some behaviours that you might want to see replicated elsewhere. So, in terms of the role of the ICF that you have for right now, we were just chatting about this prior to recording. What first inspired you to become involved in the local chapter and subsequently move through the ranks to the role of president?
Yeah, so I did my initial coach training, not in the city where I live, because I went in person and it was offered somewhere else, and built a strong community and carried on, contacts with those coaches, but they weren't local to where I live. So that's what drew me to joining the local ICF Calgary chapter, was just to connect with some people in person. So I went to one of the events. I met someone at the time, met a bunch of people, joined the programming committee. And that was kind of my entry point into being more involved with the chapter. And I loved it. I loved having sort of feeling like I had coaching colleagues, that I wasn't just doing this all by myself, right? Because when you run your own business, and it can be a bit lonely, you're just making all these decisions and choices and everything on your own. So that's what drew me in. And I've always volunteered on a variety of different things throughout my career, throughout my kids' lives, heavily involved volunteering in their sports and the schools and those types of things. So it's just something I'm really passionate about doing.
Yeah, and your ascension to the role that you're in, was that part of the initial plan? Was it see how it goes as you get in there? Was it how, I guess I should say, how intentional was it that you get there? Because sometimes in organisations they're like, "There's a warm body. She doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Let's put her over here." How did that manifest itself?
Yeah, so the very first coach that I met at that in-person event long ago was Leah, and she's a past president right before me, and so she was the reason I joined the programming committee, and then we were on that together, and then she moved into a board role, and then was like, hey, do you want to join the board? And then when she was in her president role and she was looking for a president-elect, that's when we kind of had that conversation and would I be interested in moving forward into that role. And so, yeah, it was fantastic because we had such a great working relationship and we had been working together for so long in the ICF chapter that it was just sort of, I guess, a natural progression, but not something that I initially thought, oh, this is for sure going to happen by any means.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say would be your biggest learning, your biggest leadership learning that you've enjoyed in your role as president? Because I have, you're dealing with leaders in your coaching practice all day, every day, and one of the benefits of coaching that I certainly experience anyway is as I'm working with a client through things, I'll just have these epiphanies or these realizations to say, yeah, I haven't thought about that. I should have maybe did that a wee bit more or less, or stopped or started, whatever that looks like. How did that manifest itself into your leadership lessons that you've enjoyed in the chapter?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because with clients, often they bring situations that you yourself have experienced or might be going through. And so I think it gave me a new lens as I worked with the leaders because I was now back in a leader role myself. And so some of what they were talking about or experiencing was somewhat replicated in what I was doing, leading the board for our chapter. And so it was very interesting to be back in a more hands-on leadership role rather than a support role to other leaders, like as I coach other leaders. And so I think it just tapping into all of that great leadership idea of how do we create that community and that connection and work together and keep our mission front and center. And I think that was what was really important for me.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of, forgive me, I don't know how it works. I'm a relatively new member of ICF Calgary chapter, and thoroughly enjoying all of the benefits of being so. What is it each year? Does the president get to choose a theme? Are you continuing, previous strategic themes that you're doing? How much autonomy do you have to be able to put your own personal stamp on your tenure?
We definitely work as a group. So we had strategic planning sessions last fall as a group, and we planned for a 2-year period of time. So there was the previous board had planned 2 years prior to that. Now, of course, we kind of touch back in on it every time there's a board transition because everyone is in their role for about 2 years, and about half the board changes any given year. So as new people come in, then we often adjust the strategic plan or the vision around what we have as new people coming in.
Yeah. And if you were to look back on your tenure, as we record, we're getting closer to the end than we are to the beginning of your tenure. What would you say would be the number one and number two lessons that you've learned that you just hadn't had exposure to or hadn't had experience of prior to assuming the role?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for sure one of the things that's been a priority of mine and our board at the moment is just chapter engagement and
Yeah,
understanding how do we engage members at different points in their coaching journey, because certainly we have coaches who are newer, coaches who are more established, and then we have some long-term coaches, and we really are focused on how do we have offerings that meet the needs of all of those different groups. So I think that's been a learning process to kind of trial and error, see what appeals to people. And that is still something that we are committed to moving forward. It's an ongoing process. So I think that that's been very important. And I think coming out of COVID, where everything went online, we've also been very focused on bringing back in-person events and learnings because our membership is asking for that. And I think that that provides that opportunity to meet up and talk in a different way. Well, you and I have connected in
Yeah.
person at events, and it's a little bit different. But it's so interesting because over COVID, we also had a lot of members join outside of the city of Calgary who were able to join because we had online
Yeah.
offerings in a way that they maybe weren't going to make a 2 or 3 hour drive into the city for an in-person event. So again, it's balancing the different needs of the community and really including everyone in our planning.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I have to say, I really appreciate the balance between both in person and online. The online, of course, is very convenient that you can just slot it in without any travel time or any other logistics that might come in with with having to make your way to a particular physical location. But I know, having, being an experienced person and knowing what life was like prior to online being the prevalent way of delivering material or connecting with people, that you miss the organic conversations, the ability to really see and feel the mood, the tone, the energy in the room, and sometimes that then misses or gives you an opportunity to miss an opportunity to course correct in and of the moment, because sometimes you're seeing ahead like we have in our recording for right now, and sometimes people aren't on screen, with all these very convenient excuses of, I'm just eating my late lunch, or I'm having a bad hair day or whatever. I typically don't get them, but it's it's one of these things. It's really, really interesting, and I'm so glad to hear that. And I'm not surprised actually that the coaching community are saying, let's start to move back towards this, because that's where the magic happens, and you get that opportunity, as I say, to just look around the room and see, is this resonating, or are people genuinely energized by that? I teach at a couple of local universities here in Calgary, and one is specifically all around project management. And since the pandemic, we've gone fully online with, as my understanding is, as we record today, with no a desire from our students to go back into to in person, which I think is such a shame. And I hope I don't sound like a bit of a dinosaur where I'm like, in the classroom is better, but in the classroom is better. It just is. And now at the time prior to the pandemic, there was a blended offering that we were just getting towards. You could do some of the courses online and some of them in person. You had that opportunity to provide that flexibility, but it was still in person was where you got the most learnings. You got an opportunity to connect with other people, to do the group work physically, together, and create allyships, create friendships possibly, and such going forward. So I'll be very interested to see if that continues to maintain its way going forward. But very delighted to hear that the ICF Calgary chapter have kind of said, this is the way that our membership are speaking and asking, and moving forward with intention from there. That's very refreshing, I have to say.
I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone at the AGM this month, the annual general meeting in
Yeah.
person. It is, like you said, a fantastic opportunity to just reconnect and just meet up. And while some of the learnings, like you said, if we're sitting and we're more passively learning, totally fine if that's a webinar or that's
Mhm.
a video call and you're just calling in at a time that works for you or watching the replay, and that is equally beneficial to people for for that learning that they're looking for, right? But
Yeah.
that really connection, that piece to just chat and see what are people up to and what are they doing, that's the part that I think is the magic, like you said, when you're in person.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely, definitely. And in terms of like even just the physical nature of going to somewhere, I work at home mostly now, and I really enjoy it. I don't have any complaints at all about it. But when I get myself outside, I'm kind of like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Look, I didn't realize that thing was there. And it's amazing what actually changes when you start to look around at various things that you're doing, going forward. So in terms of the I have this philosophy in life where, say, for example, a coaching session, perfect example, where there's the coaching session that you plan as much as you can plan. Of course, it's directed by the client. Then you have the coaching session that you have. and then there's a coaching session you should have had, and it's everything comes in those threes. You could say a meeting, a speech, a job interview, whatever it is. The one you plan, the one you have, and the one you should have had. And when I say that to some people, I have to kind of explain to say that's not an opportunity for you to beat yourself up afterwards and say, "Oh, what a loser! I can't believe I missed that opportunity to take the client down this path, or I missed that door opening where I could have maybe created a breakthrough or something." It's just that cognizance of perfection is a hallucination in life. It's not something that exists. So if you start to get inquisitive and curious, which is a word we use a lot in terms of coaching, that you'll have that opportunity afterwards to say, I'm going to do some reflection here. I'm going to figure out what that looks like. If I were to bottle all that into your experience as the head of the chapter, and I know that you're not done yet, but you had the one you planned, you have the one you're experiencing right now, based on the benefits of the hindsight that you've accumulated thus far. Any tweaks, anything coming to mind where you're thinking a little bit less of that, a little bit more of that, or something like that?
Yeah, I would say that in some ways, we've had some changes over the past year, or some things that have some challenges, which of course anybody does. Um, and that has taken us away in some cases from some of the initiatives that we had planned. And so that's been a bit of a challenge. And of course, you think, oh, well, if we had done this, or started this committee sooner, or started the planning sooner, maybe we could have had, fill in the blank, more
Yeah.
of the in-person events, or more of these different things that we were aiming for. So absolutely, there's always that possibility. And I think it's similar to like what you said with clients. Sometimes you're just going with where they are taking you, and it might not be where you thought you were going to go. And so I think it's important that you learn from that, and you pivot, and you adapt. And I think that that's what we've done. We've really pulled together as a board over the past year to work through some of those challenges, and to continue to make little shifts and changes moving forward, to continue to get closer to that vision that we have. So that sort of 2-year vision that we're working towards.
Yeah. And it's one of these, I mean, I guess to go back to my project management, I was teaching a class not so long ago where I had said, the plan is as good as the information you had at the time, and you now have different information, so you can then look back and say, was the plan appropriate? Was it realistic? Was it relevant? And was it executable? And the answer might be yes or no, or kind of, sort of, or whatever that looks like. And the one thing that I feel from the coaching community specifically, and this is not my experience with every volunteer role that have had or held in the past, is that there's a genuine cognizance of everyone's here for the right reasons. It's a very, very supportive community, and I felt that online and in person. And there's a level of understanding of reality, of saying, I'm not hung on this thing. You said this thing would be there by that time. And I've had experiences like that with other boards. In fact, I've actually shared quite openly that most of the professional conflicts that I've endured in my life, not all, but most, have been in a professional volunteering capacity,
Mhm.
for various areas where it just wasn't gelling well, it wasn't blending well. People were there for their own reasons, which is absolutely their right to do, but that ended up impacting the ability for everyone to be cohesive and move forward with intention and purpose, for the shared goals. And some of the conflicts, honestly, it's just, I've been kind of standing and saying, this is madness. Like, this is a volunteer role. This is something you thought you were doing just to create a little bit of good or give back, or in some way, just contribute to ongoing success. And it's been, I haven't done a lot of digging to find out why that's the case. But, I certainly haven't experienced that level of volatility in an actual professional setting, as part of my career. I don't feel that at all. And that's not with rose tinted glasses or anything. I'm quite observant when I'm in a crowd setting. And as I say, the communication and the dynamics. And I wonder, is that just a coaching thing?
Yeah, I wonder that too, because any experience that I've had with coaches, whether it's trainings that I'm taking or, getting together with other coaches, the volunteering I've been doing with the chapter, it does seem different in some ways than others because I volunteered a lot with my kids. They were in competitive sports, and so I volunteered on their teams and trying to get people to sign up for things or help with a tournament or book a dinner or be the bench mom or all these things. It always felt like pulling teeth, and to your point, it sometimes made the experience not as enjoyable as you were anticipating. And I think a big part of it, like we all encourage our clients to communicate openly and to be clear around expectations and all of that. And so I think that some of that carries over, that we have some of those skills that we can use in those situations. Yeah, that's my best guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly something rooted there. I don't think it's a fluke where you've just lucked out with a series of people that happen to be around. It feels like we could be having this conversation 5 years from now, and we'd be saying something quite similar as well. So as you transition out of your role, which I'm assuming is very time consuming, what does that mean for your business? What does that mean for your family life and your ability to be able to take the experiences and move forward?
Absolutely. So I'll be ending at the end of this month, as we were talking through, and then I'll move into the past president role. So I'll still be part of the chapter and still engaged, just in a different capacity. Um, and right now we are in a busy period, just getting ready to transition to the next board, getting the annual general meeting all organized, getting all of our things that we have to do to prepare for all of that. So yes, it is a bit of a peak right now.
Yeah.
So I am looking forward to the summer and it being a little bit slower and having a little bit more downtime, time to just relax and have a little more space to be outside and enjoy things and just make that a real priority over the summer months.
Yeah. And in terms of your business, like in particular, do you feel in the moment, it might be a bit difficult to answer that, and it might be more of a hindsight question at some point down the line, has this helped your business? Has this hindered your business? Has it been somewhat neutral and your business has been somewhat separate from your volunteer obligations?
I think for me, like I love connecting with other coaches. I plan to stay very connected to the coaching community. I really find that it supports me in just bouncing off ideas, talking things through. What are you doing in your business? How are you approaching this? Talking through different client things. All of that has been a huge support. All of that I think will continue to be a huge support. I think what was challenging at times over the past year is sometimes with the board work, there's ups and downs with volume of work or things you have to fit in unexpectedly last minute. And those are where sometimes that's the challenge that comes from because it puts a bit of pressure on your schedule at
Yeah.
times. So I would just say that that's the only thing that comes to mind.
Well, yeah. And the reason I ask that is for any of the listeners or watchers out there, if you're interested in coaching in any way, shape, or form, connect with your local chapter. And if you can, get involved with the organisation. And it would certainly be of material benefit to your ongoing growth and learning, but also just to sprinkle that little bit of reality dust there to say, it's not all, absolutely fabulous and smooth sailing. It's like any organization, you're going to have your ups and downs, and you have to be, committed enough to be able to roll with the punches as you're moving forward.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic experience, absolutely fantastic experience. And making those connections, being able to connect to other coaches, collaborate with other coaches, move forward, hear what they're doing. I think that's invaluable to have that community connection. And like you shared, I work from home as well. It creates colleagues for me,
Yeah.
right? People that I can connect with. So absolutely getting involved in the chapter, volunteering, coming to the events, coming to the annual general meeting is a great way to start.
Perfect, absolutely. So, as you know, Robyn, this is called the Best You interview series, where I take this opportunity to ask each of my guests what regular practice does Robyn employ to give Robyn the best opportunity to be the best version of herself?
Yeah. So for me, Gary, really, I've created some healthy habits in my own life that I follow. And those are around like healthy eating, exercise, meditation, sleep. I would say sleep is the key one, making sure I'm balancing my schedule so that I am doing that time to wind down, have that routine in the evening, letting go of any of those worries, putting all of that aside. And that for me is a real cornerstone habit that I practice.
I love it. You know, it's something I resonate so much with that. It's something that I have been trying to get better at as I go forward. And I think part of it for me has been reframing my relationship with sleep. Whereas when I was younger, it was just this annoying thing that I had to do every day to get me to the next day or the next thing that I was wanting to work on. And more so recently when I've had a more regular sleep pattern, whether it's been kind of disturbed or a little bit restless or whatever, my relationship with it afterwards, it was very um, that was a good sleep or that was a terrible sleep before, whereas now that was the best sleep that I could get under the circumstances that I was in. And if it wasn't optimal, it's going to be better tonight because I'll take more care and do things with intention going forward. So I'm delighted to hear that. I'll maybe hit you up as we go forward to see if there's any specific pieces of magic that you particularly use that you can impart on me, because it's something I've been absolutely on for quite some time, and it genuinely does make a difference. Absolutely, it does.
Happy to help anytime, Gary.
I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, Robyn, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so they're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I welcome connections and always just pop me a message, set up a coffee chat, anything like that. I love to connect with other people.
Fabulous. Excellent. Robyn, great to see you again. Thank you very much for all the work that you've done with the ICF Calgary chapter, and I look forward to seeing you at the AGM. And as we move forward together, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure as well, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.